an honor to be amongst this group of esteemed community leaders here today. I first want to again thank you, Megan, thank Lou Jean and Diane for the work that you all do, and of course a special hello to Sam McGavran and Andrea from PPG. Thank you so much. I lean a lot on your research and the dedication that you guys put into coming up with really substantial findings of our community and storing it in a place that gives me a platform to champion legislation in the Erie County Legislature. So give yourselves a round of applause because you guys, it is your hard work that drives my agenda, and that is how government should work. It should come from the people. So yes, I am a newly elected official. I was sworn into office January of 2018. I am just completing my freshman year. Before being an elected official, I was a small business entrepreneur with the social enterprise, the college simulation experience, which I'll get a little bit more into. But I was also a single mom who had grown up in poverty herself. I was living where I still live on the west side of Buffalo, renting a 2-bedroom apartment, driving a vehicle that was on its last leg, collecting food stamps from the county and a daycare stipend while I was pushing my way through grad school and trying desperately to make ends meet. So when I made the decision to get into county government, it wasn't something that I had been groomed for, or it was something that I had thought of doing my entire life. I grew up one of 11 in a blended family of half-brothers and sisters and step-brothers and sisters and working parents who gave their all to provide for us. I was just someone who knew what it was to struggle. I was someone who really understood what it meant to be waiting on your paycheck to come in so that something doesn't get turned off. Something that I don't share often enough is my electric bill, my electricity was shut off on primary day, on election day, the day that I got elected to office. I woke up that morning to take a shower. It's common for the candidates to go to the voting polls and shake hands with some of the voters as they walk in to vote, with hopes that they will see your face and your smile and vote for you. And I got up to put my baby on the bus, and I went to turn on the lights, and the lights did not come on. And immediately I thought about the food. And so I ran to the refrigerator, and sure enough, that little light in the refrigerator was off, so that's always a sign the electricity is shut off. And I said, no, not today. I threw the baby in the car. She's 9, but she's my baby. She's my one. I call her the baby. I threw my daughter in the car. We drove to my parents' house with like this knapsack of like the outfit that I'm supposed to be wearing today to get elected to office. And we took showers at my mom's house, and she made her way to school. I called the electric company. My parents paid the bill. And in between going to the voting polls that day and shaking hands, I was trying to see when the electric company was going to be back at my house to shut the electricity on. So I'm going to a voting poll and then running home to see if they're there, because they can never give you a time that they'll show up. They always give you that window. I don't know if anybody's had their electricity ever shut off, but they always tell you, we'll be there between 9 and 5. And I'm like, what? I'm trying to get elected. Well, I was successful in that election, and the cost, it was not cheap. It takes hard work, it takes dedication, it takes a made-up mind, but most importantly, it takes someone that is not afraid to overcome barriers. So I give props to Itina for the bravery to be able to share your story, sister, but to also be able to not allow the barriers that we face in life to define your future. That is what it takes to be a good elected official and a leader, and someone that is seriously dedicated to momentum and to change in a community that is facing oppression. I don't have a political science degree. I grew up an artist. I knew nothing about politics. And statistically, when you ask a woman to run for office, they always say no. That's not the case when you ask men to step up and run for office. Of course I will. But not women. Statistically, a woman has to be asked almost 8 times before she finally says yes. The friends that came to me to ask me to step up and run and represent the 2nd Legislative District, they had to ask me like 27 times before I finally said yes, because I kept thinking about the electricity getting cut off. Who's going to put the baby on the school bus? Who's going to put food on the table? There are certain responsibilities that I had in my life because of my circumstances that kind of deterred me from wanting to take a leap. But I looked at myself in the mirror, kind of like Tina said that she did, and I said that if there's somebody that's going to represent in the county government women needing daycare stipends, families needing daycare stipends, I should not leave men out of that note there. People needing help to be able to put food on the table, HEAP, to make sure that they have warm homes, putting people in society in a place where they can actually be coherent and comfortable enough to actually progress their life. Who better to do it than someone who has lived through it? And at the time, the makeup of the legislature, the person that was leaving the seat that I was running for, she had had the seat for a long time, but she was one of 3 women. So if a woman did run for that seat, a woman's perspective may not have been shared in that government body. And that was something that was very important to me. Currently, as a Black American, there are 2 legislators in the legislature, which is made up of 11 members that are of Black and African descent. The person that was vacating the seat that I was running for was one of them. So if I didn't run, if it was not me, that would be one less Black American, one less woman on that body to make decisions about the district that I lived in, which happens to be the poorest of the 11 districts. It happens to be one of the few districts that only reside in the city of Buffalo. It happens to be a district made up of 9 zip codes, and 6 of them fall within New York State's 100 poorest zip codes. Who was going to represent and fight and vote for the quality of life issues that matter to the people that live in that district, if not me? That made me afraid. It made me afraid for myself. It made me afraid for my daughter. The political climate was very intense. Our current president had just been elected to office. There was a lot of emotions going through the community and going through all communities nationally. I made a decision because I knew that it had to be me. And that's what leaders have to do in this day and age. You have to decide that it's going to be you, that it has to be you, that if you don't do it, the job just will not get done. So, a little bit of backstory about me. I grew up on the west side of Buffalo. I told you I grew up in a blended family. I was one of the oldest children of the blended family. At 6 years old, my mother decided that she wanted to take me out of School 19, which was our community school on the west side, and she wanted to put me into a specialized school, of which you had to take a test to get in. So that was the first time, 6 years old, that I was told in order to get into this school or to progress, you need to pass this test. That's a lot of pressure for a 6-year-old, yes? Okay, so at 6, I was concerned about passing a test to be told if I was good enough to get into a school, an institution. This is where this mindset began. I took the test, I did pass, and immediately when I got into the school, there were a lot of programs for certain students to be able to thrive. I was never allowed to take part of those programs. At 6 years old, I noticed that there was a difference between my classmates and myself. A lot of my classmates used to get to leave the school and go to a specialized program 1 day a week called Resource. And the Resource program was in one of the most vibrant places in the school building. It was in the theater. And I love the arts. And in that time, the theater shared a space with the library. So the library was the place where you could go into books and look at all of the beautiful illustrations. I loved being in that space. It was the perfect space for the Resource program because in Resource, kids got to sit on the floor, they didn't have to sit in desks, they got to color, they would always talk about this concept of brainstorming and thinking outside the box. It was awesome. I never got to go to that program. I never knew why. Me and 2 other students in the 1st grade always stayed back when the rest of the class would line up and go downstairs to Resource. The only difference between me, the students who stayed behind, and the students who got to go were the way that our papers, our homework papers, and our classwork papers would come back to us. I remember at 6 years old seeing the difference was the kids that got to go to resource and have fun in the specialized programs used to get stars and smiley faces on their worksheets. Me and the 2 students that stayed back, we always got check marks and sad faces. And so at that point, I began to believe that if you got check marks and sad faces when it came to your schoolwork, you did not deserve the treat of going to resource and having fun. One day, some odd reason, my first grade teacher, Ms. D'Agostino, says to me, April, you're allowed to go to resource today. No explanation why. I just lined up with the students and I went. And it was the most amazing experience ever. I was able to not have to sit in a desk. I was able to color. I was able to create. I was able to talk to my friends. I was able to just have fun and be free. It was great. The next week came, the students lined up. So of course, I lined up with them. I went down to resource and the resource teacher said to me, April, you're not supposed to be here. I remember immediately feeling so embarrassed. How dare I think that that was something that was real? How dare I think that resource was really going to be something that I was truly a part of? That walk from the theater and the library space back to my first grade classroom was one of the longest walks that I've ever taken in my life, okay? I've walked down wedding aisles, I've walked down the aisle to the divorce court, and neither one of those were as long as that aisle that I had to walk back to the second floor of my first grade classroom. I walked in and Miss D'Agostino got really close to my face and she said, don't you ever, ever, ever leave this classroom again without my permission. That program is not for you. Take your seat. When I tell this portion of my story and my testimony, a lot of people are always very confused. I am also confused. Everyone always wants to know, well, why did they let you go the first time? And then what was all of that about? And then why did they tell, I don't know, I was 6. I'm telling you, this is what I remember happening. And that was the last time that I was ever allowed to be a part of the resource program. But the trauma of that experience, it stayed with me throughout my entire life. It continues to be with me as a newly elected official when I'm in the legislature surrounded by a majority room of men who have gone to college and who have law degrees and who have grown up in families and been afforded opportunities to be able, they have a right to be there. I don't. I'm just a black girl from the West Side. Why are you even talking right now? How dare you be majority leader? Shut up, don't speak. These are the things that go through my mind when I'm voting on your taxpayer dollars. I'm joking. But it stays with you when it's embedded in you when you're very young. I eventually left that school system and my mom decided to allow me to audition for Performing Arts Academy because she noticed that I was a creative student who lended a lot of talent to the arts. So in the 5th grade, I went on to Buffalo Performing Arts Academy. And it was an interesting experience. Buffalo Performing Arts Academy back then and still now is a school that starts at grade 5 and it goes all the way through the 12th grade through high school. And it is an absolutely wonderful, it was a wonderful experience and it's still a great school. Today I just had the privilege of going there to sing a ballet last week that my daughter was performing in. It's a great outlet for students who truly are right brain learners, who are creative and who need to be in that type of environment in order to thrive. The issue was my academic retention. So in my arts classes, from grade 5 through 12, I was the superstar kid. I created the best artwork, the best poems, the best choreography. I was the girl to have in every production because I was bright, I was fun, I was creative. I'm an artist. But when it came to the classroom, the maths and the sciences, I was the student who got sad faces and check marks on my paper. And there was this constant debate in my education experience in middle school and in high school. The teachers who were the art teachers always advocated that April was one of the greatest students and most creative students and a prize of performing arts. But the academic teachers would say she is lazy, she doesn't do any work, and she never tries. And I was always caught in between the two. And there'd be a time for me to be able to perform, and then here comes an academic teacher saying, absolutely not. She doesn't do her work. She just failed the last test. She doesn't deserve that. It was just constant stress. I remember making it to senior year. And in senior year of high school, I had one of the most difficult times. It was absolutely the mirror experience of the first grade. I had been in high school for 4 years, and I had not one math credit. And that's because math has always been a subject in which I have a difficult time retaining the information. There's no room in math to like elaborate. Either the answer is right or it's wrong, right? You can't like be creative with math. And so that's difficult for someone who learns and sees the world as I do. So I made it to senior year. Freshman year, they put me in a class called Math R. It was a combination of Math A and Math B. R stood for Regents. And you were supposed to take this one math class, and that was going to be the one mandatory math credit that you needed for graduation. I took the class freshman year, I failed it, took it in summer school, failed it. Returned to school sophomore year, took the class, failed it. Took it in sophomore year summer school, failed it. Returned to high school junior year, took Math R, failed it. Went to summer school junior year, failed it. I returned to school as a senior into a freshman math class. No math credits at all. And they put me back in the same math class, same math teacher. And they were almost positive that I was going to fail it. The guidance counselor said, look, April, you've been in school for 4 years, and in order to get a high school diploma, you're going to need a math credit. Your only option is to, one, you gotta pass math this year, but two, in order to get the second math credit that you need, what you're going to have to do to be safe is to go to night school at Bennett. Now, at the time, I don't know the dynamics of Bennett High School now. It's actually a combination of a bunch of schools on that campus. But when I was in high school, Bennett Night School was for young men who were in gangs and they were dismissed from school, or it's for girls who've gotten pregnant. Those were the people who went to Bennett Night School. I was neither, but that's where I had to go to get this extra math credit just to be safe, to make sure that I made it across the stage. So senior year, while everyone else was preparing for the prom and doing the big school musical, remember we were at Performing Arts Academy and doing all of the fun activities that seniors do, I was in school taking all of my classes, then going to my freshman math class, leaving school, getting on the 2 Clinton bus, going downtown, then catching the subway to Main Street, and going to Bennett Night School at night. That was my senior year experience. Now, by the grace of God, I passed both maths, and I was able to walk across, yeah, you can clap for that. And I was able to walk across the stage with the rest of my class, but the damage had really been done. By the time that I went to college and I realized that you didn't have to take math, you could kind of like make your own schedule. Like you could go to theater classes and art classes all day. That's exactly what I did. And I wanted absolutely nothing to do with academics. The problem is in New York State, we have these things called general education requirements, and in order to get a college degree, there are some basic courses that you have to take. This cycle began again. I was in my senior year of college, and they said, April, we see that you've taken puppetry and Shakespeare on Neptune and all of these wonderful, interesting arts courses, but you don't have any general education requirements, which means you cannot get your college degree. I was not prepared for that type of trauma again. So I just said, forget college. I'm done. I'm gonna go to New York. I'm gonna get discovered. I'm gonna be such a famous person. Later for college, don't need it. So I go to New York. I did not get discovered. I was not super famous. But one thing that did come my way was the opportunity to become a teaching artist. And in between auditioning for commercials and soap operas, what a teaching artist does is in New York State, they don't always have the funding to put arts programs in the public schools. So they look for professional artists and they pay them to come into the schools and teach their craft. Well, me growing up with 11 siblings and having all of this wonderful love and experience for the arts, that was the best thing for me. It provided me some stability and a steady paycheck as I was waiting on being discovered. So I was working at the Bronx Academy of Letters, and I was the theater elective teacher. And I had all of these awesome kids in my class, and we were doing all of these amazing projects. And some days I noticed that some kids just were not attending class, and it was kind of throwing off the process of creating. I remember going to their academic teachers and asking, why are you holding these students from my class? And some of the academic teachers would say, well, they're just not trying in my class. They're not trying with their academics, so they don't deserve your arts class. So you guys know exactly what that did to me. It reminded me of what they used to say to me. And I remember getting so worked up, and I said, listen, whatever it is that I have to do, whatever it is that I have to do to help these kids be able to excel in your class and also pass and be able to attend my arts class, I want to do it because these kids, when they come to my class, they're different kids, and I really believe that they need the arts. Tina, you can speak to that. The arts is essential in kids' lives. And so they allowed me to take the curriculum, and the kids could come to my class just as long as I was doing work that pertained to the academics. So suddenly we started to do rap battles on the human anatomy. Suddenly we just started to paint murals about the Civil War. Suddenly we started to have poetry slams about the solar system. And one by one, those students' grades started to increase in their academic classes. The principal comes to me one day and he says, April, what you've done in this blending the academics with the arts has truly changed the culture of our school. And I said, well, thanks. All I'm doing is kind of teaching class the way I wish it was taught. I was recreating that resource program that they wouldn't let me go to at 6 years old. I was making learning fun. I was doing the part of school that I loved, that made me feel like I was worth it, that made me feel smart. I was giving that to other kids. And he said, you're awesome at it. I would like to offer you a full-time job teaching here at this school. I would like to, it's going to start at $50,000 a year. I'm a struggling actor at this point, sidebar. It's starting at $50,000 a year. You're going to have paid vacations and breaks, and you get all the perks that, you know, teachers get. I'd like you to start immediately, and I want you to just create curriculums that fuses the academics with the arts. I said, this is awesome. He said, yes, it is. What's your degree in? I said, I don't have a degree. He said, what do you mean? In order to teach, you have to have a degree. I said, well, I dropped out of college. And he said, oh, April. And that was that opportunity. That was the first time in life that I had ever regretted not getting my degree. I began to understand just how society works. Just like now as an elected official, working in government, you're learning how government and politics work. Even like after a year, you get it. We live in a society that values education. College is not going to be everybody's choice, and that's okay. But if you have the opportunity to go to school, you should figure out how to utilize that opportunity only because society values education. People treat you different, people talk to you different, and people pay you different. Different opportunities come your way when you have a degree. That was a hard lesson to learn that way, but I learned that lesson that day. I went through a divorce at that time and my daughter was 5 years old, and I decided that the best thing for me to do was to go back home to Buffalo, be near family, and regroup. And the first thing that I did was join a program. I became an AmeriCorps member. I started volunteering to get reacclimated to Buffalo because Buffalo had become something very different from when I had left 10 years ago. And as an AmeriCorps member, you have to do these projects called service projects. So I was placed as an AmeriCorps member in a college prep program with immigrant and refugee students who had come from poor backgrounds. All of them were going to be the first in their family to go to college. And I was tasked with creating a project for them. One thing that I knew about these students was they had the wrong idea about college. They were obsessed with buying cars. They were obsessed with getting apartments. They were obsessed with hanging out with friends and fraternities and sororities. And they just imagined college being this free-for-all life where they could take all of the classes that they wanted to take and there was going to be no accountability ever. I knew firsthand that's not what college is about. College is about discipline, college is about focus, and sometimes that autonomy that comes along with college life is not a good thing if you are not prepared for it. You have to be ready for that freedom, or else the opportunity will pass you by. So what did I do? I created a theatrical experience. I went back to the drawing board. And it was this game where all of the students got this false identity and they had a time limit in which they had to get a college degree. But in order to get the degree, you had to do your laundry, you had to pay your bills, you had to get scholarships, you had to do all of the things that April tried to avoid while she was in college. The kids did it and they had a blast. And the dean of students at the program said, what you've created, April, is awesome. This is the second time in life where someone's coming up to me and saying, your creativity is absolutely awesome. You should take it to another school. And I did. And then the leader was over there said, you should take it to another school. And I did. And before you knew it, I was in business with this workshop series that was working with young people who were growing up in poverty and afforded free tuition because of their ethnic background or their financial status through federal aid. And a lot of them would probably end up dropping out of school because they don't know how to stay in there, because they're the first in their families to go, because college is not the narrative of their neighborhoods. And does that mean that they shouldn't take advantage of the opportunity? No. It means that people have to focus more on preparing them for the opportunity so they don't end up like me, frustrated and just blowing it off. And then one day faced with an opportunity in prosperity and then you can't take it because of a poor choice that you made when you were a young person. So this little game or workshop experience that I created as an AmeriCorps project turned into a small business. And here you are, April Baskin, doing business with all of these big colleges and selling this curriculum. And to date, the college simulation experience, which it's called, has serviced 5,000 students between Buffalo, Erie County, Rochester, and Syracuse. We've given away $3,000 in scholarships. And you know what they can say to me? They say, you make preparing for college and preparing for life fun. They say, you made resource class, Miss Baskin. They say, it's fun to learn with you. I give the young people what I wish adults had given me, which is time and patience and understanding my learning pattern. Therefore, I would not have grown up believing that I was less than. So, a short time after that, my daughters decided she wanted to play date with a friend, and the mother of the friend was a former elected official, and she too turned to me and said, you're awesome, and that's how that whole cycle of you should run for office started. And it was all about me just kind of doing the best that I could with the cards that I had been dealt with, but never, ever, ever giving up. And some people taking the time to notice that my cards were different, but they were special. And that means that they could, in somehow, in some way, make a difference in somebody else's life. It's important for us as leaders to not just be in tune with the barriers or the statistics or knowing where the problems are in society, but we also have to be willing to think outside the box. If I didn't think outside the box, then I wouldn't be where I am now. If the person that asked me to run for office had said to me, it doesn't matter that you don't have a political science degree or you've never worked on a campaign, the fact that you're fired up enough and that you're passionate about helping people, that's what it's going to take to make a difference in this community. That's what's made all the difference. And so, as I close, I do want to go down the list of some of the amazing things that I have done as an elected official in my freshman year. And I want to let you guys know that these things were not sparked out of something that I felt needed to be done, but it was me listening to the community and truly thinking outside of the box. That's what's helped me be a successful legislator in this year. I mentioned to you that I come from a theater and arts background, and the chorus of a very famous song from Rent, Seasons of Love, the lyrics are 525,600 minutes. How does one measure a year? I measure my year by the resolutions that I have supported, by the local laws that I have passed, and by the issues that I have fought for. Not if I was prepared or if I looked the part of the perfect candidate. It's about the work that I was able to get done. It's about the barriers that I was able to overcome. And it's about serving the people. The minute that I was sworn into office, I was promoted to majority leader. I still to this day don't know why, but I would like to say that it may have something to do with the fact that I just believe in the people, and I believe that as a collective, a body can get work done. In February, we worked on some transportation legislation, and that came out of hearing from the community that there were parents who were upset that children's routes to school were just not competent and they didn't make sense. So we fought for it, and the NFTA and Buffalo Public Schools have now come to a new contract agreement, the first one in over 12 years. Thank you. Also in February, I voted in favor of a bill that put a ban on the conversion therapy, and it prohibits the practice of fraudulent or abusive practices on children. That bill passed 11-0. In April, Erie County's first ever fair housing law was passed. Now our fair housing law goes above the state's fair housing law, which protects military status, family status, and source of income from landlord discrimination. And that came out of, I remember when me and my baby girl first came back to Buffalo, we were looking for a place to live. You know, I would look and landlords would tell me, you're a single mom who probably won't be able to make the rent all the time, or I just don't want kids living here. That's not okay. And I remember fighting for that portion of the law because of my experience. That law passed successfully in the legislature. I fought for equal pay for women. We fought and changed the local apprenticeship law. Now vendors that wish to have contracts more than $200,000 with the County of Erie, they are required to have an apprenticeship program with a 30% graduation rate. You need to be training people if you're getting the money. You need to be training people so that they can take part in upward mobility and developing our economy. That vote passed 6-4 in the legislature. When the Supreme Court came down with the Janus decision, me and some of my colleagues fought against it, and we protected the public sector unions in the county from being influenced for people that want to weaken our middle class structure here in the county. We fought for the mortgage assistance program, which allowed people in the state who were facing home foreclosure to receive state funding to get out of foreclosure. The deadline in which the applications to receive that, it was so close to the auction, but through me and my the Erie County auction, me and my colleagues fought very, very hard to extend that deadline so that more people could take part in that pot of money from the state, and their homes were removed from the auction this year. We saved people's homes from foreclosure. And I knew coming into office that the holding center was a massive beast, and it was going to be quite a big pill to swallow, and that I would have to be the person to champion reform at our local holding center. India Cummings was a young 27-year-old African-American woman who lost her life in the holding center in 2016 due to neglect by the deputies that were over her care. And after fighting and standing with the community, people like Orlando were there when we called on the Attorney General to investigate her death, and currently the State Attorney General is investigating the death of that woman, and justice will be served. So those are just some of the things that I was able to kind of achieved in this first year. And when I look back to age 6 to being now going on 36 years old, constantly believing that I was never good enough or that I would never do anything because of the check marks and the sad faces that constantly popped up in my life, to now know that I have made such an impact on the community, it's overwhelming. And when I look around this room, I encourage all of you as leaders to look in your own journeys, look at some of the things that you've gone through. How can you creatively create a space where, because of what you've gone through, you change the trajectory of someone else's life? That is our responsibility in making Erie County and Western New York a better place. We thank God for the statistics, we thank God for the research. Without it, we don't have support for what it is that the work that we're doing. But real change, that's gotta come from you being uncomfortable with something that you've gone through or you've seen. That's where the true success has come from in my life. So thank you all so much. I know that was a long story, but I'm very, very proud of it. Just as I can tell, Itina is very proud of all that she's overcome. And just know that I am here to stay, as I hope you are too. And together we can work to make New York State and upstate New York a much greater and more equitable place. Thank you so much.